back 3 or 4 years in order to understand the historical significance of some of our expenditures. And so again, COVID-19 has certainly given us a skewed view, if you will, of what a normal year looks like. And so we had to consider that. And then going forward, we've put a plan in place to meet with budget managers somewhere around the Christmas break or right before to begin the budgeting process. So next year's budget, 22-23, will certainly begin long ahead of time and give us the opportunity to meet with managers so that we can get a more accurate budget in front of the SAB. The revenues, let me talk quickly about the revenues. I mentioned the two numbers on the revenue side. As I mentioned, the Special Administrative Board on June 23rd did adopt the original budget. And the original budget did not include at that time ESSER II revenues. And that was simply because the ESSER II application had a deadline of around that time. I think it was due by the end of June. And so we were able to get our application submitted by the appropriate deadline. The ESSER II application, again, was $15,672,712, which we have highlighted here. We have done our initial reimbursement of $5,813,846.82 as of June 2021. And that primarily went into the teachers fund. And so one of the things that we've learned is that once we get those reimbursements, we have to put the money back into the fund in which the monies came out of. And so that information will certainly go back to the teachers fund. Our next ESSER reimbursement, if you will be somewhere on the general fund so that we can make sure that our general fund balance is solid as well. And so again, you'll see this $5.6 million, to be exact, $5,668,925.08. We're hoping to recoup or file these revenues by June of 22. Okay, so somewhere along this fiscal year, by the end of June, we will have sought reimbursements for $5,668,925.08. Now that also leaves us with a balance here of $4,189,940.10 to file the subsequent fiscal year. So again, this is the entire ESSER II revenue package, and you'll see what we plan to do in terms of revenues seeking reimbursements by each of those fiscal years. Our ESSER III, this budget does not include any ESSER III revenues. Our ESSER III application is still pending with DESE. It has not been approved, and subsequently, anything related to ESSER III will have to come before the board as a supplement or add-on to the new budget that will be presented here tonight. So I just wanted to make sure the SAB is aware that all ESSER III expenditures and revenues will come before the board as a supplement since our ESSER III application is still pending and we don't have full approval. In addition, I mentioned that there was $761,157 still to reclaim in ESSER I, which is the original CARES Act. And so we have received about $2.1 million in fiscal year 19-20. And so we have budgeted those revenues in this fiscal year as well. Okay. Let's talk about some of the expenditures. And this
excuse me, Dr. Singleton. We're going to do this page by page. So let's go back to the previous page.
Sure. Okay.
Ms. Oswald, do you have any questions?
Not right now.
Okay. Ms. Morrow-Real? Ms. Morrow-Real?
I'm sorry, I was going to have him explain the 761, but he just did.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Singleton, am I to understand the $5.8 million in ESSER II has already been received, or we requested reimbursement on it?
Yes, sir. Dr. Beckwith, you're correct. That $5.8 million was received in June of 2021. In fact, we received those monies before the fiscal year ended, which really did help us with our fund balance prior to the end of June.
And when you add that 5.6 and 4.1 together, what does that come to?
The 5.6 and 4.1 comes to roughly about $9.8 million, something close to it.
Okay, I have no other questions on this page.
Okay, thank you. The next, and again, as Dr. Beckwith said, we'll go through this line by line or slide by slide. And here is where we get into the amended budget. Here is where the changes start to come on the expenditure side of the budget. And so in the detail, in those 96 pages that you will see in the budget detail, these were some of the adjustments that were made to the line items. So under the object, I identify the actual line item where the adjustments were made. Under the column current, we identify what the current budget has in those line items. And the amended budget tells what the proposed amendment is proposing. And so again, the object, the current, and amended, you will see in all of the slides. And at the top, you will see that this is our summer school budget. So this summer school budget is actually for summer school 2022, okay? And so the justification you will always see at the bottom. This is the rationale that the budget managers gave in order to get the budget amendment submitted. And so the nurses line item 6151, it was currently had $1,000. The amended budget put an additional $1,000 for a total of $2,000. There's a DSO line item that was $1,000. The amended budget is proposing $2,000. In instructional supplies, the current budget has $6,000. The amended budget is requested for $10,000. In contracted pupil services, the current budget has $25,000, and the amended budget is proposing for $30,000. So this is the summer school operating budget. Dr. Nichols is the budget manager, and this is the rationale that Dr. Nichols gave: to cover the cost or stipend of one nurse and DSO for summer school. So the plan is to have a nurse and a DSO support summer school. In addition, the increase in instructional supplies is to cover the cost of the instructional material. There are new curriculum for each teacher. There are workbooks. There are resources, licenses, pencils, crayon, journals, manipulative kits. All of those things will go into the instructional supplies, as well as transportation costs for our scholars who attend summer school. So those are the justified reasons for amending this budget and giving such increases. Are there any questions at this point on the summer school budget?
Dr.
Ms. Oswald? Ms. Oswald? Ms. Morreal?
I have no questions.
Okay. Dr. Spurgeon or Dr. Nichols, how many students were enrolled in our summer school this summer?
So we had 300 plus scholars register, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can email you that information tomorrow, Dr. Beckwith.
Okay, you're saying that's the number of students who were enrolled?
No, that was the number that requested to participate in the program, but I can email you the actual numbers.
Okay, and where I'm going with this, the number of students enrolled this year, this past summer, should dictate what we plan for the next school year. And if we aren't doing it on that, then in my judgment, we're just pulling numbers out of a hat to go from 25,000 to 30,000. But I'll wait until you forward to me the number of students that were actually enrolled this summer. No other questions?
Dr. Singleton, you might want to let the SAB know, one of the things that we found around transportation is even though we budgeted $25,000, doesn't necessarily mean that money was taken out of summer school. So you might want to talk a little bit about that. That money oftentimes is taken out of the actual transportation line item from first student.
Yeah.
So actually, I would like to say that currently the budget in the past for contractual pupil services, that's for transportation for summer school. In the past, it was 71,000. So actually we reduced it to 30,000. for the upcoming school year. And we reduced it because like you said, Dr. Beck, based on the trend over the last 5 years, we were not spending 71,000. We were only spending about a little under 30,000. So actually we reduced that line item from 71,000 to 30,000 based on that information.
Thank you for that explanation. That helps. Still send me the number who were actually enrolled, please.
Okay.
Continue, Dr. Singleton.
Sure. And as Dr. Spurgeon was mentioning, one of the things that we found out during this budgeting process is that sometimes the contractual services for transportation were charged to the main transportation contract rather than to the summer school budget itself. So we will hopefully be able, as Dr. Nichols is going to make sure that you get the enrollment numbers. But we did find that there were times where some of these charges weren't charged to the correct line item. They were charged against the main contract as well. So let's move forward to the next one, which is alternative education. Dr. Beckwith, this is where, and SAB members, this is where the ACE contract is budgeted. And so let me start over to the left. Alternative education is the ACE contract. The current budget has $900,000. The amended budget has $1,274,873 in it. The special school district's budget, those are for local tax efforts for students that are in foster care and also to support homebound instructions. Again, we also have to pass along our basic formula monies and things and Prop C revenues that we collect since SSD services those students. And then also we've got a contractual pupil services line item here. And then there's one for other LEAs that goes from 70,000 to 250,000. And again, this jump here, this is new, okay? This is not something that we would have known during the original budget adoption, but this is for our students to cover the cost of launch and mocap. We currently have about 50 students so far that are enrolled in this program. That number could get greater. And so as of right now, we felt that $250,000 was a comfortable number to budget for the cost of those programs. So let me go back up to the top. The $1.2 million that you see under amended next to alternative education, that is for a full year's contract. Here's the math here. To adjust the annual contract for ACE, which is $1,158,975, plus it includes an additional $115,000, which is a 1-month bill. We found out, Dr. Patton could probably speak to this, but we found out during the process that there's one outstanding bill from last year, January of 2021, that was not sent to us, and subsequently it was not paid. And so we need to budget enough to cover that bill in addition to the full annual contract for ACE. Also, I've spoken to the special school district and transportation line items. That's going to cover the foster care students, also our homebound instructional costs, and then those monies that we have to pass along to SSD that we get basic formula from the basic formula, and also Prop C revenues. Are there any questions for this slide so far?
Ms. Mara-Real?
I have no questions so far.
Ms. Oswald?
No questions.
Okay. Dr. Singleton, the alternative ed budget was originally for last year was $1,158,975. That budget was cut to $900,000. My first question is, was the supervising administrator over those funds, was that person advised that the budget had been cut from 1.158 to 900,000?
The supervising person, as in Dr. Smith, is that who we're speaking of? Yes. No, right. No, sir, Dr. Beckwith. Dr. Smith was not aware or in conversation about the budget adjustments. No.
Okay, then as a result, he came to the board asking for approval of the alternative education contract thinking he had 1.158 million when he really had 900,000. So my concern is, if you're now asking us for 1.274 million, why did you cut the budget from 1.1 million to 900,000?
So Dr. Beckwith, my response to that question is the ACE contract came after the budget had been approved and in the July timeframe. We did not see the numbers for the ACE contract until after the SAB had adopted the budget. Therefore, we did not know that the contract would come in at the same 1.1 million, nor did we realize at that time that the $115,000 was a bill that was outstanding. All of this was discovered in the July timeframe after the SAB had adopted the budget.
Okay, I understand about the January part of it. I still don't understand why you cut the budget from 1.1 million, and this was back in May, to 900,000, and you never informed the supervisor of that account. That doesn't make sense to me.
Understood.
And then again, he brought it to the board unbeknownst to him that he didn't have enough money in the budget to support the recommendation that he was making. Also,
Understood.
let's go down to 6311, other LEAs. It's my assumption that $70,000 is for students who guardians live in our district. They're really wards of the state, but their home is in another district. Is that correct?
Dr. Beckwith, let me allow Dr. Patton to answer that question. I do get those contracts mixed up sometimes. So is Dr. Patton available to answer that question?
Yes.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Dr. Beckwith, in answer to your question, the line item that covers the local tax effort is 6311. It is one that covers the local tax effort.
But that doesn't clarify my question. Is that for students who reside in our district, but their foster care is in another school district? Therefore, they bill us back for that.
Yes, sir. Their foster care, their parents reside in our district and they're in foster care in another district. So we pay for the education of those particular students to the district that the foster care parents live in, because that's where they're attending. You are exactly right.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, and so how much have we billed districts where their student is in foster care ward of the state in our district, and we need reimbursement from them? We're sending out amended, it was 70,000, we're sending out amended $250,000. So how much did we get in, Dr. Singleton, last year from other school districts?
Dr. Beckwith, that is something that I would have to look into. I don't have that number before me.
Okay, so, and I'm going to send you all my questions, Dr. Singleton, but I'm thinking we pay out quite a bit and we probably bill other school districts who owe us money not very well. And that's a revenue stream that we can be using because other districts certainly are using it.
So let me,
yes.
I'm sorry, Dr. Beckwith. So let me speak to that. We did bill for 2019-20 and 2020-21 for the local tax effort for students who attend Riverview Gardens School in foster care, but their parents live in other districts. I can tell you that I don't know the number off the top of my head that we billed for, but it was near $100,000 that we billed for. And so I can't give you that number, but I can tell you that for 19-20 and 2021, we sent out bills over the last 3 months to collect that money, Dr. Beckwith.
Okay, and why just in the last 3 months?
Well, quite honestly, I can tell you I was not aware that we should have been billing for that until I recognized that we were getting bills from other school districts, which made me ask the question, why aren't we billing other school districts? When I started investigating that, I found out that there was a 19-20 was not billed for and 2021 was not billed for. And simply, I did not know that we should have been And I can go further to tell you that everyone that was involved in the process in terms of those that are in the SIT department are all new, and I was new in the position, and we simply did not know that we should have been billing for it. I discovered that again, as I started getting bills from other school districts, it made me ask the question why we weren't billing, and then I started investigating that.
Okay, and I appreciate your candor, and I'm glad we are beginning to bill, but work with finance to get the answer for me. This past school year, how much have we billed for?
I will do that.
Okay, continue, Dr. Singleton.
Thank you. The next budget, Dr. Beckwith, where we saw some adjustments from the previous year, was the athletics budget. Dr. Spurgeon and I met with the athletic director, Zach Thurwalker, and the adjustments were very small. However, they were sustainable. And Mr. Thurwalker agreed that there was no need to make any additional changes or amendments to his budget. And so I do just want to point out in this particular case, the meetings were had, but there was no changes to the athletic budget when we came back around. So are there any questions here about athletics?
Go back to the previous slide, please. And Dr. Singleton, it would help me in the future if you numbered your slide and I can simply say, go back to slide X.
Okay.
I'm looking for the one about MOCAP. Is that in the summer school or what?
No, MOCAP is here, Dr. Beckwith. That's the additional $250,000. And so that number there should represent the amount of that we could potentially end up paying. Dr. Patton could probably speak to this as well. I think those numbers could range anywhere from $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 per student. And so currently we have close to 50 students who are going to take advantage of the MOCAP and launch program.
Dr. Patton, is that $725,000 your figure or finances figure?
That was finances figure, Dr. Beckwith. We have so far about a little bit over, probably closer to 60,000 students. The number increases every day. And there was really no way to project that, although Dr. Singleton did talk to me about that particular number. And I told him that that number is increasing every day. And there's really no way to project how many students will put in for MOCAP. The costs range from $3,500 to $5,500, depending on the vendor that is utilized. And so every day it's increasing. Today we got 3 or 4 or 5 phone calls for additional parents. And there is really no way to project that number because there's no cap on it.
Okay, explain to our listening audience, or viewing audience, what MOCAP is and what launch is.
MOCAP is a virtual option that our students get to select from should parents decide that they don't want their school, that they would like their students in virtual learning. And so we use vendors. Launch is one of our vendors. There are several vendors on the MOCAP list that parents can choose from. The one that we use most often is Launch, but there are several other vendors, like can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are several other, maybe about 4 or 5 other vendors that parents get to choose from. And the cost again ranges from $3,500 to $5,500, depending on which vendor the parent selects.
Okay. Dr. Singleton or Dr. Patton, do we get the ADA for these students, or it goes to Launch or MOCAP?
No, we get the ADA for their attendance in that program, sir.
Okay, so that helps us to pay for whatever the cost is.
Absolutely.
All right. Continue, Dr. Singleton.
Thank you. All right. Again, nothing in the athletics. Are there any questions here?
Continue.
All right. Transportation. Here's another transportation contract. Transportation, we have a 3-year contract with First Student. Our transportation generally runs us about $1 million, maybe $1.1 million, so to speak. Last year, we obviously did not have a full transportation year. Neither the previous year did we have a full transportation year where we were able to see the full effect of this First Student contract. Last year, we were able to use First Student to do some of the bus runs for food services, but again, it was on a very limited basis. And so we'd have to look back several years to get some more concrete information. But for this year, we are projecting a somewhat of a normal year, although the first week or so has certainly been a challenge. But this year, we are projecting using approximately $1.2 million for the First Student contract. Again, that current budget has about $1 million, but the amended budget has an additional $200,000 for what we're projecting to be somewhat of a normal year, which will include pickup and drop off for the fiscal year 21-22. Are there any questions here for transportation?
Ms. Oswald?
Yes. Have we estimated or done anything about adding extra routes, as we said, in Prop E?
Yes, so Ms. Oswald, that's a really good question. Dr. Spurgeon and I are in conversation with First Student. In fact, they've given me some preliminary numbers for adding routes as a result of Prop E. One of the promises of Prop E was that we were going to provide transportation for students who lived within a mile radius. And so that could be 3/4 of a mile, that could be a half a mile. We haven't really settled on a definitive number. One of the problems with that as of right now is this nationwide driver shortage, okay, with transportation. And so I do not think at the current time that First Student is in a position to add additional routes of that nature. But that $1.2 million certainly is a start of adding some smaller requests in to cover some of our students. I got a couple requests today. Some students live within a mile radius, but they have to cross a busy intersection or they have to pass unsafe housing. And so it's good to know that First Student will allow those students to get onto our transportation buses as well. So, but to answer your question, we are in conversation, but we're not quite ready to pull the trigger with the up to a half a mile or so because of the driver shortages and the challenges that we're already having in this fiscal year.
So Ms. Oswald, the other thing I want to mention is typically transportation tends to smooth out towards the end of September. And so we've asked First Student to see how many new families actually stay and how many new families we actually get enrolled. And so coming towards the end of September, we should have a good number about how many spots are still left on the current bus routes to be able to develop new, not new routes, but be able to pick up more students that live within a mile of their schools.
Ms. Morrill, any questions?
That's what I was going to ask. You kind of answered my question about those routes. But one of the things that I noticed over here in Dalewood, we have some routes that are relatively close to one another. Can those routes be amended to where it would reduce the cost of, or is this just a standard figure that they charge us so much for those routes?
Yeah, they just charge us by the bus, the bus and the route. So as long as you can actually pick students up when you're actually on the same route, there's no additional cost. It does take a little bit more time and planning because obviously when you make more stops, but keep in mind that just like you said, if we're going to pick up more students, we might have to combine some bus stops to be able to continue to stay on the same time frame so we don't have to add routes. So you're absolutely correct. So there might be some adjustments made based on how many students that live within a mile might need to ride that bus as well.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Singleton, why was the increased cost of $200,000 not included in the 21-22 budget if the contract with First Student required that increase? We had a 3-year contract. It required an increase. So why didn't we include the additional $200,000 in our original 2021-2022 budget?
Right. So Dr. Beckwith, our minimum contract with First Student would not add up to $1 million always. It depends on the how we use them. For instance, we had the same $1 million contract with First Student last year. However, because of COVID and because they ran routes on a consolidated schedule with supporting the food services piece of what we were doing, then the monies it's okay to budget them there, but we actually did not spend all the monies that were budgeted with first student. And so, the same scenario here, but the $200,000, Dr. Beckwith, for whatever reasons, it just was not added to the contract. So again, I mentioned to you earlier, when you look back at the last couple of years, we don't have when you look back the last 2 or 3 years, we don't have good solid data to really project some of these numbers.
Am I to understand that the current contract is for $1 million?
The current contract, Dr. Beckwith, it depends on the number of school days. It depends on the number of bus routes and things. It's not just a flat rate contract where we just pay $1 million. It depends on the number of routes, and it depends on the number of school days, etc. It depends on the after school activities. It depends on all of those. So we do have certain contractual things in place. Our rates are in place, but there's nothing that says that the contract will add up to an exact $1 million. So that's what I wanted the SAB to be sure to take from this.
Then I'm still questioning why add $200,000 to the budget at this point in time, where we could wait and see what it really is, and then have an amendment later on, since it's just a guesstimate.
Right. Well, Dr. Beckwith, I certainly understand, and that is an option. However, I think that while we're doing the amended budget, we don't have to spend, our actual fund balance will be based on what we spend. It won't be based on what we budget. And so I think that doing it here is a good time to do it, or we could do it later on. But my recommendation is to do it here in the amended budget, knowing that if we only spend $800,000 of this $1.2 million, that we don't have to come back to the board and ask for an amended budget, because our fund balance will be based on what we actually spend and not what we budget.
Okay, and my counter is that budgets ought to be based on something factual, especially if it's $200,000. And to raise it $200,000 because we don't know whether we're going to spend it or not, to me, it's not a good rationale that we may need it. I'm sure we're going to have we have budget transactions all the time. And that's just my feeling about this one, but continue.
Sure, no problem.
I'm sorry, I'm not finished with this. In the May rendition of the 2021-22 budget for contracted student services, it was cut from $1,194,148 to $100,000, which was a total of $194,000. Now the SAB is asking us to restore that amount plus $5,852. I don't understand why it was cut from the 2021-22 budget in the first place. And now you're asking us to put the money back.
Yes, sir. So Dr. Beckwith, again, my response to that is we are budgeting and hoping for what appears to be a normal school year. And we believe that $1.2 million will get us to the normal year without us having to come back to the SAB for some type of supplement or amendment. That's my response.
Okay, I'm beginning to feel, no disrespect, this is something like a shell game. Budgets were cut in May, okay? And my thought is budgets were cut to meet the board's minimum 15% balance, okay? And that was done. I'm not saying it happened, but this is my perspective on it. And then after that budget was approved, now is the time to go back and ask for more. And that doesn't sit well with me. You don't have to answer that. But I'm seeing, as I went through these budgets today, more and more I saw where people's administrators' budgets were cut in May or June. And now you're coming back to the board, although you cut them, you're saying we want to put the money back now. Something's wrong with that picture. Continue.
Thank you. The maintenance of facilities, and I think Ms. Green is on here to.
He freeze up.
She's on mute. We can't hear you, Dr. Singleton.
I think he froze up.
Okay.
So the
Green, can
current
you unmute? Are you back on, Dr. Singleton?
Oh, yes, sir. Can you all hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, you were
Okay,
going
I'm
in and
sorry.
out for a minute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did see something flash that says unstable internet connection. I don't know if it's storming outside of my house or not, but I apologize. And if we get disconnected somehow, I'll go downstairs and log on a different computer. But you all can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry about that. So 6319, $122,510. The amended budget is being recommended at $337,000. The next line item covers repairs and maintenance. Those are for compressors, motors, fans, boilers. It was $500,000 and we're recommending it to go back to $660,000. The 6335 water and sewer, $154,500 is being amended to the $175,000. That's to cover the cost of our water and sewer bills. The 6411 maintenance supplies, those are for our typical maintenance items, trash bags, paper towels, dispensers, those kinds of things that are necessary. $375,000 is the current budget. After meeting with Mrs. Green, her request is $475,000. And then in the line item that says buildings, it's being recommended from 200 in upwards of 286,000. And that is to cover the increased cost of capital expenditures once Prop R is over. So we also have to, one of the reasons for the increases here, Dr. Beckwith, is because Prop R funds, as you know, are running out. In fact, I believe Ms. Green has provided information or is anticipating to provide information showing that we've got roughly $200,000 left in Prop R. And so that's one of the real reasons for the increases in the GOB accounts here is so that we can sustain and maintain our operations after Prop R has run out. So I'll pause here and answer any questions and ask Ms. Green if she could answer questions as well.
You need to unmute. Ms. Oswald?
No questions.
Ms. Morreal?
Ms. Green, were the figures that are being amended your original budget plus some additions? And if they are, can you tell me what your original budget was for each thing and what the amended amounts, the additional amounts that are in there are now?
Okay, some of them were the original budgets.
Which ones?
Ms. Morreal, let me answer that while she's looking. In the May rendition of the GOB, the repair and maintenance budget for 2021-22 was cut from $660,000 to $500,000. Now the SAB is asking us to restore the budget to the $660,000 level. Again, it seems like now you see it, now you don't. That the budget was cut $160,000, and now they're asking us to put the $160,000 back. Ms. Green, were you informed of that cut from $660,000 to $500,000?
No, sir.
Okay. And SAB members, the reason why I'm asking this, because I strongly believe these cuts were made without input from the overseeing administrators. They were just evidently cut by finance without telling the supervising administrator. To me, it's important to at least have the courtesy to tell them their budget is being cut. Other professional service line item was $122,510. Now the request is to return it to within $484 of what the 2019-2020 budget was, which is $337,844. Notice they're going back to what that budget was 2 years ago. Okay, 2 years ago it was $337,844. Look at what it is now, $375,000. Were you advised of the cuts, or your budget was cut, I believe, to 122,510, or that's what it was? Help me with that, Ms. Green.
No, sir, it was cut to 122.
Okay. Were you advised of the cuts?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Continue, Dr. Singleton.
The next line item deals with food service. The 6343, there are two line items. One is technology-related repairs. I believe that budget had $1,000 in it. The amended budget is being recommended at $12,000, and the other budget for food supplies of $1.6 million is being recommended to $1.8 million. The reason for the technology-related repairs increase is that the new food service director is wanting to purchase or renew a license paid for. It's called Titan. It's a food service management software program that does nutrition analysis and inventory management. And that was not that was a part of another line item in the past. Now that we know that this is a license renewal, we've budgeted in the appropriate line item. And so that's the reason for the increase there. There was no cuts to that particular line item. We're adding to it because it was budgeted in a different line item before. In food service, in the food supplies line item, the $1.6 million that it was reduced to, again, the data that we showed over the last couple fiscal years, again, we did not have a normal school year. So the increase here of $200,000 is us planning for what we believe to be a normal school year, and then to cover the increased cost of commodities. Food all over the world has gone up. Food prices, the cost to distribute food, and DESE approved processed commodity foods as well. So this increase here is because of the increased cost in food from our commercial distributors and those that DESE has approved as our food commodity suppliers. Are there any questions here about food service?
Ms. Morrow-Real?
I want to ask the food service manager what her original balance budget was before the 1,600.
It was 200,000. It was 200. It was right. It was 200,000.
Good evening.
I'm sorry. Go.
Correct.
I'm sorry.
Correct.
Right. Was cut from 200,000 to 1,600 in the May rendition of the budget. Now the SAB is requesting to increase the budget to 1,800. Well, if that be so, why'd you cut it from 200,000? Just another example of cutting and then asking us to put it back. And I go back to the fund balance. I think this all has to do with the fund balance, making sure that they were able to meet that 15% fund balance. Then once they got that, let's hike it up again. I'm sorry, Doctor. I'm sorry, the Director of Food Services. You may come in now. I interrupted you.
Good evening. Dr. Beckwith is correct. The explanation of the change in my budget of $200,000. It was the 1.6 million.
The 1.6 million was your original budget?
That was what was presented to me prior to our budget meeting with Dr. Spurgeon after the budget had been presented to me.
No, Ms. Morrill, her original budget was 200,000. It was cut to 1 million or 1,600. Let me get that right. 160,000, 1600. But it was cut, and now they're asking us to restore the cuts. That's what that is.
Okay. So this is the question that I have with regards to this, because it seems like to me, the easiest thing to do, since you talked to the budget managers, right? You all met with the budget managers here recently. It seems to me that all of this could have been avoided if you had spoken to the budget managers to get an idea, you know, since you were saying some of the contracts related and all of this, it seems to me that all of this could have been avoided if the budget managers had been contacted to say, hey, I'm having trouble getting the contracts in or whatever. What do you recall your budget being set at?
I agree,
Okay.
Ms. Morrill. I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree that the solution to being here now would have been, or what should have happened is that the budget managers should have been consulted long before the Dr. Spurgeon and I had an opportunity to meet with them recently.
So I understand that you're explaining all of this to us, but I just want to just ask this question just to get it out of my head. So basically, are we repairing what we messed up?
I think we're restoring line items now that we have the information that's necessary to justify the restoration.
Okay.
That would be the way I respond to that question.
All right. Thank you. Thanks.
Ms. Oswald?
I have nothing to add.
But I go back to why cut budgets when you know you're going to have to come right back and ask for the money put back in. And Dr. Singleton, you're correct with food going up. Okay, I see that at when I buy groceries. So if they were going up, why would you cut the food supplies budget? Just doesn't make sense to me. When it was $200,000 and you cut it to that amount, you cut it $200,000. It was, I believe, like 2 million, something like that.
Yes, that was the original budget.
Okay. But board members, again and again, it's the same scenario, not informing administrators who are in charge of the budget that they cut their budgets. And also the amount that they cut, they're now coming back and asking us to put that money, that same amount or a little more back in. I want to go back to the previous slide because there was something else with maintenance and supplies. Supplies and maintenance were cut from 475,000 to 375,000 in May. Now the SAB is asking us to restore the budget to its previous level of $475,000. Was the administrator with the oversight responsibility for the line item previously informed of the original $100,000 cut from the line item? That would be you, Ms. Green.
No.
Okay. I hope board members, you see where this is going. And Ms. Morrill, your point was very well taken. When you're doing budget cuts, you do them proactively by going to the people whose budgets are going to be cut and you inform them, we're going to have to cut your budget by X. But to do that and not inform them until later, to me, it's doing it backwards. Let's go on to human resources.
Human resource.
I'm sorry, no, I didn't have any questions with Dr. Spurgeon's budget, and that's why I said go on. The next one is human resources, but you go on with your presentation.
Oh, that's okay, Dr. Beckwith. So if there are no questions, again, there was $1,000 increase for travel. Again, I think this is going back to what we consider a normal school year. And so with Dr. Spurgeon and Mrs. King both doing travel, the additional $1,000 was necessary or was being requested in the superintendent's budget.
Ms. Oswald, any questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No questions.
Ms. Morrill,
No questions.
I have no questions. Continue.
The assistant superintendent's budget, same concept. The administrative supplies were cut from 2940 down to 2000. Then these are just supplies for, I believe this is Dr. Patton, administrative supplies for her to purchase things for her department. So after meeting with her, she wanted the $2,940 to be able to buy supplies for her area.
Ms. Morrill, questions?
No questions.
Ms. Oswald?
No question.
Dr. Patton, were you advised that your budget had been cut to $2,000?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Continue.
This is the SAB budget, and a number of these line items, they were reduced initially. They were restored after getting feedback from Dr. Beckwith. So the SAB approved budget that was approved in June was actually the correct amounts that were approved. These additions were requested over the last week or so after meeting with the SAB coordinator, and I think in consultation with you, Dr. Beckwith, and I think the reason for the increases are to cover the cost of services or training for additional SAB members should they come. So that's the justification for this particular budget. Are there any questions?
Ms. Oswald?
No questions.
Ms. Morrill?
What was our original budget, Shay?
The budget that's stated under current, Ms. Morrill.
That was our budget?
Yes, ma'am.
And the amended budget is because they're of what now?
I went in and I estimated the cost associated with the required training and so forth in the event that additional members are added to the SAB.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I want to say to those listening, I experienced the same thing with the SAB budget. As I looked through it, I saw cuts had been made, and I asked Ms. Fields, had you been contacted concerning the cuts? And she said no. And that's when I asked that it be restored, because just like many of you, a budget was cut without informing Ms. Fields that the budget has been cut. So that is a restoration, but it's a restoration after I raised a concern. Continue, Dr. Singleton.
The human resources budget. The human resources budget under current shows the current amounts that were approved. Under staff services, the $1.4 million is being amended to $1,435,506. Under other purchase services, it's going from $50,000 to $60,000. Travel from $2,000 to $3,000, and general supplies from $3,000 to $4,500. The initial increase under staff services, the ESS contract for substitute teachers is included in this particular line item. And so the actual contract amount, again, the board approved $1.4 million, which was a very good rough estimate. But I believe after Mrs. Williams sat down and looked at the actual contract itself, these numbers, the 1,435,506, actually reflect the exact amount of the contract. In addition, the additional $10,000 in other purchase services is for the cost of DocuSign, and the additional travel and supplies are to cover the additional travel for human resources and to purchase additional supplies for the department. Are there any questions on the HR budget?
Ms. Morrill?
No questions.
Ms. Oswald?
No question.
What Dr. Singleton did not say was that the human resources staff services budget for substitute was cut originally by $300,000. And it was replaced once Miss Williams noticed it. I'm not sure that she's with us tonight. Miss Williams, are you on the Zoom meeting? I know she did ask to be excused. But once again, the budget in a pandemic was cut $300,000 that's for substitute teachers. And now they're asking us to raise it from the $1,100,000 to $1,435,000. But if you add the $300,000 that was originally cut back to the $1.4 million, you come very close to that $1,435,000. Another example, and I think Ms. Williams would tell you, that was cut without her having any knowledge of it. And it just goes on and on and on. Continue.
Dr. Beckwith, one comment that I'd like to make here, even last year, the human resources budget, the ESS contract was paid for in half by another funding source. In fact, it was paid for by ESSER 1. And so I think that any good budget analyst would have taken those charges that can be paid by ESS or by the ESSER grants and charge those staff services to another funding source. Although the SAB is approving the full amount to be budgeted here, I think that at some point we have to consider using ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds to reimburse ourselves for some of these expenditures. And so I do just want to point out, and I understand your concern about the budget adjustments, but there are a number of categories here in facilities. There are a number of categories in Dr. Patton's budget that will be restored once we file for revenue reimbursements by way of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. We have almost $50 million that our district has access to that we normally would not have access to. And so while I do understand the concerns about the adjustments, and a number of the budget managers were not contacted prior to these adjustments being made, I do want to state for the records that we certainly do not intend, or once these expenditures are made, we intend to reimburse ourselves for some of these eligible costs, and we intend to make the district's GOB budget look much better than it is at the end of this presentation. So I
agree with some of what you're saying, but once again, Dr. Singleton, you are leaving out the fact that you cut a budget. You cut that budget by $300,000, okay? And it would make me feel more comfortable if you would say up front, we cut this by $300,000. We recognize that was too much of a cut. We now want to restore it. But you're not even saying that. I'm having to bring this up.
Just on this one, Dr. Beckwith, I did mention that one when I did the SAB. So I do apologize. I was simply reading from the screen. The $1.1 million is not on here. And so the $1.4 million is. So I do apologize.
Right. The 1.1 is what was in the budget after the cuts, after $300,000 cuts.
And I just want to say that I think if that is the case, or if that was the case, still as a person who is over a budget, if I knew that up front, at least I could say, oh, okay, then just, I need you to direct me on making sure that my expenditures will be reimbursable. I just think that if that had been shared ahead of time, again, we wouldn't be in this position.
Dr. Singleton, did you inform Ms. Williams of the $300,000 cut proactively?
Mrs. Williams and I did have a conversation about her budget. And that's when the conversation came up about restoring hers. As you recall, there were two budgets that were restored when the SAB adopted. It was the SAB budget and it was the human resources budget. So
Yes, but I had to raise the red flag to get the SAB budget restored.
yes, sir.
So I'm asking you again, did you proactively inform Ms. Williams of that fact, or it was once she noticed that the $300,000 had been cut?
Yeah, no, Ms. Williams was not informed of these adjustments prior to her noticing these adjustments.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Continue.
The next one is the MIS technology budget. You will see here that Dr. Larry just does an outstanding job of really itemizing all of her expenditures. I won't go through them all in detail, but the 6319 was the current budget showed 250,000. It's being amended to 400,000. The printing and binding is where we pay for the RICO contract. This is our contract with RICO Services. The contract actually came in at $226,000. And so she's requesting an additional $26,800. The supplies budget here of $75,000, she's asking for an increase to $150,000. And then the tech-related hardware, that tech-related hardware will allow Dr. Larry to purchase additional Chromebooks and laptops and computer supplies. Now, I will say this, these particular line items, the vast majority of them are also reimbursable through ESSER. And so generally what I see happening here is the district spending these monies and us being able to add these monies back to our fund balance by being reimbursed these amounts in the technology budget. Are there any questions about technology?
Ms. Oswald?
No questions.
Ms. Marreal?
No questions.
Okay, on the technology, the professional services budget in the May rendition, this line item was reduced from 400,000 to 250,000. Now you're asking us to take it back to the original amount, 400,000. Dr. Larry, were you aware that your budget had been cut from 400,000 to 250,000?
No, I was not.
Printing and binding was cut from 225,000 to 200,000 in the May rendition of the GOB. Now the SAB is asking us to increase the budget to 226,000. Was the administrator, again, Dr. Larry, were you informed proactively of the cut in your budget from 225,000 to 200,000?
No, I was not.
Thank you. Continue.
The next budget was my department, Business and Finance. The audit services, the current budget adopted was 35,000. The amended budget is being recommended at 58,000. This is to cover the audit. I believe the cost of the audit this year was up to $43,000. I believe last year it came in at about 38,000. So there was about a $5,000 increase in the audit contract, which we found out after this budget was approved. And then there's also a $15,000 addition because of a special audit ordered by the Special Administrative Board. So that justifies the 58,000. Other professional and technical services, the 74,000 is going from 74 to 84. The additional $10,000 there is to cover the cost of training. We have a Keystone representative in here to assist us with some of the payroll functions because we do have a payroll administrator vacancy coming forward. In fact, her last day is tomorrow. And then this particular line item where it says judgment and settlement will go from $7,000 to $188,250. This is to cover the cost of the SIT litigation. I want to be very clear that this amount was not in the last budget, and it should have been, but this is the proper place to budget it. And so the SIT agreement, half of it was paid in December of last year. It came out of the Business Services Department. We had to do a supplement in order to pay for it there. We're now doing an amended budget and requesting that the monies be put there to cover the cost of the SIT litigation. So are there any questions here about the Business Services Department?
Ms. Oswald?
I thought we had set aside specifically money for the SIT litigation. Had we not?
I'm confused when you say specifically set aside. You know, we had promised two installments, and we have made good on one installment. This is the second half of those payments, which are due this coming December. And so we're actually putting that money in here rather than coming to the board with a supplement later on like we did last year. We're actually budgeting the money for it this year. And again, it wasn't included in the original budget. Dr. Beckwith did have to remind us about this litigation, although, you know, even though it wasn't included, we certainly were obligated, and it should have been included in the budgeting process. So,
Ms. Marville?
That answered my question.
Okay. Ms. Marville and Ms. Oswald, each of us remembered that there was a second payment due as a result of this litigation. And when I looked at the budget, there was no money in there for the second half. And I'm wondering if Ms. Oswald and Ms. Marville and I realized that that second payment needed to be budgeted. Why wouldn't the finance office know that also? Silence says a lot. Continue.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The next department is the Student Services, Student Support Services. This particular department, the current budget is set at $275. This was the budget for as far back as I can go for this particular department. It's always been budgeted at $275,000. The last 3 fiscal years showed that $275,000 was sufficient. Although I don't have the data for the last fiscal year, I'm going back a couple of fiscal years ago. I think after talking with Dr. Patton and realizing that the additional cost of the supplemental nurse contract, so we have, because of COVID and contact tracing, we have contracted with Supplemental Health to provide 5 nurses. We did hire a nurse, which we were able to subtract one of those nurses from the contract. Plus, there's an additional supplemental contract that we entered into for 2 additional nurses and 1 contact tracer. So there's a total of 6 nurses and 1 contact tracer with Supplemental Health that's being recommended. So the budget of $275 is being recommended for an increase to $450,527. These are contracts that we do not have access to in June when the SAB adopted the budget, but therefore these are necessary, and these are also reimbursable through ESSER funds. Are there any questions here?
Ms. Marville?
No questions.
Ms. Oswald?
No questions.
Okay. Dr. Singleton, send me the page number for this 6319. I'm looking at page 74, and I need to know whether that's the correct page, or because what I'm thinking that line item you're talking about is not 6319, it should be 6341. I could be wrong about that, but send me the page number where I can find where it was budgeted at 275. I do see that on 74, but I'm wondering if you're talking about the right thing.
Okay, it's highlighted, Dr. Beckwith. I'm looking at page 73 on my copy. It has 942 student services at the top, and it's highlighted in green. Now, you may not have printed the most recent copy. Remember, there were some adjustments made. So your page may be one off from mine, but I don't imagine yours should probably be 74. And do you see it covered in green?
Okay, and I did print out that, so I'll take a look at it again. What you're talking about, I did print those pages out where you had green on
Okay,
them.
okay, 73. Okay, not a problem. All right,
Okay.
thank you. The next school and community relations, this was Ishmael Systrom's budget. And Ishmael, again, after meeting with him, there were no additional adjustments that were needed to make. I think there were some slight adjustments to his budget, but according to Mr. Systrom, he could live with those adjustments. Are there any questions here?
No questions.
Hearing none, let's move on.
Okay. Next one here is safety and security. Safety and security budget. Again, we historically had budgeted $450,000. The budget was adjusted by $100,000 to $350,000, but subsequently, the Safety and Security Department is asking for an increase to $559,361. The justification at the bottom tells you what these costs are for. Our SRO contract this year is $391,000. The Securitas contract, $162,000, and the Crisis Go contract of $5,592 for safety and security. So those amounts add up to the $559,000. Again, it was $450 last year. It was adjusted to $350, but subsequently, even the $450 that would have been budgeted would certainly not have been enough. We still needed an additional $110,000. Are there any questions on safety and security?
Can you explain the difference between the SROs and the Securitas people?
Let me let Dr. Patton do that. I think she can do that a little bit better than me.
Good evening again. So Ms. Morrill, the SROs are the school resource officers. They are contracted through St. Louis County Police Department. We have 5 SROs, and they're contracted through the St. Louis County Police Department for $391,000 for this school year. Securitas is a company that we use, and we have 3 of those members in our schools, but 2 are at the middle school, 1 is at the high school. And that is just a security company that we use. They are in no way tied to St. Louis County Police.
Okay.
Ms. Oswald?
Questions?
Dr. Singleton, once again, Dr. Patton's budget last year was $450,000. It was cut $100,000 to $350,000. And now you're asking that it be raised to $559,361. So the question is, again, why was $100,000 cut from her budget if you now need $559,000?
Yes, sir. And Dr. Beckwith, I can only say that some of these numbers at the time that the budget was adopted, we did not have all of these contracts in place. And so, we are asking that those line items be restored.
Dr. Patton, were you informed proactively of the $100,000 cut in this line item?
No, sir.
Thank you. Continue.
And I believe CNI is the last department for the amended budget here. So these are really, the first 2 line items are general supply line items. One was cut to $5,000. Dr. Nichols is requesting that it be restored to 10. One line item, 2329, 6411, had no dollars. And for some reason, we had not budgeted anything there in the past couple of fiscal years. Dr. Nichols is requesting $10,000. These are for her administrative supplies for her and her department. The 6332 repair and maintenance is being requested from $5,000 to $10,000. Other professional and technical services is being requested from $12,000 to $19,000. Other purchase services from $0 to $1,500. Assessment supplies, this is for the assessment department from $15,000 to $25,000, and then the improvement of instructional supplies from $10,000 to $20,000. These are all things that CNI determined were necessary in order to run their department for a normal fiscal year and for them to be able to take care of supplies and repairs and instructional resource material. Are there any questions here? I hold on, I believe there's a continuation of this one. Let me get this other part of it out of the way because this is all her budget. Also, the one last piece of this is the CNI textbook adoption. These numbers here have generally come to the board by way of a supplement. In fact, as far back as I can see, the textbook adoption has never really been budgeted properly, and the CNI department has always had to come and ask for a supplement in order to finish the textbook adoption. So you will see that what these amended numbers are, they were not reduced. I want to make sure that we're clear. They were the same numbers that they have always been. However, knowing that we know what the cost of the textbook adoption is currently, then we are requesting that these line items be increased and amended. And then we're going to, this is one line item, or these are line items where we should find ourselves being able to be reimbursed these numbers through one of the ESSER 2, and I believe here the ESSER 3 grant, which will cover that 20% mandate for learning loss. And so this is for the ELA adoption of the textbooks. So both of these pages summarize the changes in the CNI budget. Are there any questions here?
Ms. Marville,
No, I don't have any at this time.
Ms. Oswald?
Not right
Oswald?
now.
Okay. Dr. Singleton, I'm really happy to see the textbooks in here. As I've been reading, many of the other surrounding school districts are using some of their ESSER funds for reimbursement to upgrade their textbooks. The only suggestion I would have, I saw a minuscule amount in there for the libraries. Seems to me that if we're going to do these textbooks increases, we ought to increase that library line item. I know we gave them a supplement some years ago, but I remember Dr. Spurgeon saying literacy is our leverage, okay? Why not put some money in there? It may not be in this section, but to increase the amount that we are by upgrading our library books. I'm sure the librarians would be very happy about that.
And Dr. Beckwith, I think that we wanted to do a little bit more of something, but I think it was budgeted prohibited for us to do it at that time, if I remember correctly.
You are correct.
Yeah.
But if he's saying that these can be reimbursed through ESSER,
right.
Now's the time to do it.
Right.
Sir. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Singleton, let me jump in real quick. One of the things that we've done in the area of libraries, Dr. Beckwith, is we've worked to expand the online access to ebooks. And so that's one thing that we've done simply because that provides more outside the classroom or extended classroom learning for our scholars if in fact they're not able to check as many books out as we would like them to be able to check out. So that's at least one area we've been able to expand during the pandemic.
And I'm glad to hear that, Dr. Spurgeon, with the St. Louis County Library, the ebooks are becoming some of the most popular takeouts or checkouts in the library system. So that's good. Thank you.
Okay. And the last slide here, as I promised earlier, we'll go into the capital projects fund. Let me explain real quickly that our capital projects it's a fund that we make expenditures from, but the capital projects are basically any expenditure or any unit item with a cost of more than $1,000. And so when you really think of capital projects, the real big piece of information that comes to mind is related to Prop R, okay? Prop R engages and they make a number of purchases that the unit cost is over $1,000. Their equipment or their material, there's those things that individually have a cost of more than $1,000. Some of the laptops that we purchase are fit under capital, okay? They are normal supplies and materials with a unit cost of more than $1,000. Now, we don't typically budget for those. There are some items, some departments do have a capital account. For instance, food service and technologies, they have some capital. The problem is we have no revenue source, and capital typically comes from fund balance. And so it is my understanding that historically, during the budget process, that the SAB would have been requested to approve a transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund to cover this deficit, okay? So we're faced with two deficits, one from last year, which is one of the things that's preventing us from being able to file the ASBR report, is that we've got about $1.5 million in the capital funds account from 2021 that we need to cover we need to make a transfer to cover this deficit. And also the bottom line, the $1,122,259 are what we have tentatively in place to spend for the current fiscal year. So we're being proactive and we're asking the SAB during this amended budget to also not only account for the deficit that we ended with last year, and we made a number of capital purchases. A lot of these are, some of these were in our SIG grant, our school improvement. We know that that was the last year for SIG. A number of these capital projects came out of Title. And I'm glad to report that SIG and Title, those capital monies, we were able to reclassify some revenues to kind of offset this deficit, so to speak. So long story short is there are two fund balance transfers from the general fund to the capital projects fund that we are recommending. And they are to cover the cost of those capital expenditures that were made during last year and that are budgeted to be made for this upcoming fiscal year. Are there any questions here regarding the capital funds deficit?
Ms. Oswald?
Not right now.
Ms. Morreale?
So that's approximately $2.2,705,000.
Ms. Morreale, let him add that up.
Okay, thank you.
It should be on here. Okay,
Yeah.
You got the 1.583 and the 1.122. What does that add up to, Dr. Singleton?
So Dr. Beckwith, they are for two different fiscal years.
I understand that.
Right.
I understand that.
So the numbers add up to roughly $2.7 million. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's roughly a $2.7 million transfer. Let me do the math for you right now. So the number is 2,705,624. 2,705,624.
I concur. That's what I had.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And Dr. Singleton, what was the total amount of the salary increases?
For the current fiscal year?
Yeah, the one that went into effect on July 1.
I think Dr. Beckwith, I'm sorry, Dr. Spurgeon, were you talking? Oh, I thought I heard someone. Dr. Beckwith, I think that that number is not standing out right now. I know when we were estimating, we were talking about $2.1 million, and that was the estimate for the amount of the increase in the salary line items.
Okay, and my theory, and it's just a theory, the supplements will be enough to carry the salary increases. And that all of this reduction and so forth, and this is just my theory, was based upon being able to give the salary increases that we gave. And I don't lament our staff getting increases, they deserve it. I'm very concerned about the way we went about this. I had mentioned to you before, Dr. Singleton, that this was my thought, that all of this movement around was to afford the salary increases, hoping that they would be reimbursed by ESSER, which they will be, and go back into the teacher fund because that's where they came. So my bottom line concern is I think there was a lack of transparency here, and the budget development, advising administrators proactively that their budgets had been cut without their knowledge. And then after the fact, asking for a supplement to restore all of these budget cuts. To me, that's not the way it should be done. With that, there's Dr. Singleton and Dr. Spurgeon are recommending that the supplement totaling approximately $2.7 million be approved. May I have that motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ready for the question? Are there any? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I heard one aye. Okay. I'm going to vote no on this, knowing that it will pass anyway. But it's my way of protesting how this was done. And Ms. Fields, I want the record to show that I voted no and the reason why I voted no. There being no, the motion passes. There being no further business, may I have a motion for adjournment?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ready for the question? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion passes. We are adjourned. Have a good rest of your evening.
Good night.
Good night.